The Great Hunt has begun. In occupied Luhansk, the so-called mayor was blown up. The commander of the Black Sea Fleet in Crimea and a high-ranking general in the Kursk region have been killed. Explosions in Moscow, Putin is being urgently evacuated. Does Trump really want Ukraine to capitulate? What is behind the US refusal to provide weapons to Ukraine, and what will be the consequences? In addition, the US has lifted sanctions from some Russian banks. Greetings, my name is Katerina Pachalchuk, and right now, here are the main stories. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine, and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. Let's start with the front lines. The Pokrovsk direction remains the hottest spot along the entire front line. On the 2nd of July alone, Russian occupiers stormed the positions of the defense forces 58 times here. The situation has also escalated around the village of Kamyanske in the Zaporizhzhia region. The enemy has broken through the defenses in the center of the settlement and continues to advance. This is confirmed by deep state data.
The enemy managed to break through the defenses in the center of the settlement, where they are now trying to push into the northern part, and they are also managing to infiltrate and amass forces in the southwestern part of the village. At the same time, they are managing to operate more effectively, assaulting positions in the southeastern part. Previously, the enemy's buildup in this area had been observed in advance, but despite this, they managed to break through to the center of the defenses and get into the center of the village. Over the past week, the enemy has been exerting active pressure on the positions of Ukrainian fighters and has been taking over their positions. If we talk about objectives in this area, specifically in Kamyanske, they are not very promising because even capturing the heights beyond the village will not bring anything significant or advantageous. The terrain in this area features elevation changes, which are quite a significant challenge for infantry, especially during periods of active drone operations. First and foremost, the enemy is employing their most common tactic, pushing forward wherever they find a weak spot and then exploiting that opportunity.
But there is also good news. The General Staff has stated that the settlement of Bohdana in the Dnipropetrovsk region was not captured by the Russians, as Russian propagandists claimed, and remains under the control of the armed forces.
Units of the armed forces of Ukraine continue to hold back the advance of the Russian occupiers, who persist in their attempts to cross the administrative border between Donetsk and the Dnipropetrovsk regions. The enemy has not succeeded in achieving this demonstrative objective, no matter how many costly assaults they launch with small infantry groups and sabotage and reconnaissance teams. A few days ago, one of the enemy's small reconnaissance groups managed to infiltrate the settlement of Bohdana, located in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The invaders managed to take photos with the Russian tricolor, but that was the last thing they did. Ukrainian soldiers eliminated the occupiers. In one of the subsequent assaults, 2 Russian servicemen were lucky they survived and were captured by the Marine Brigade of the Ukrainian Navy, thus replenishing the exchange fund. Therefore, the reports of Russian propaganda about capturing a bridgehead in the Dnipropetrovsk region do not correspond to reality. Bohdana remains under the control of the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
Give a like to support Ukrainian soldiers under this video and write a few kind words in the comments. We know for sure that they are watching us. And now let's talk about Russian mobilization, or more precisely, about the preparation of cannon fodder in the world's second largest army. I don't think I'll surprise you if I say that Russia doesn't care about its own soldiers. But still, I want to show you the conditions they're kept in. No comments.
Look, the bars are like in a prison. Keep watching. This is how we sleep. Here, these are bed linens. We are from the special military operation. These are our bedding supplies. We sleep on them. Here, please take a look. This is the window, and here's another person without a leg lying in these conditions. Here's a person with a leg also lying here, and these are the bars on our doors. Here's a person standing with an injured arm, and this is the water we drink. Look at how much water we have. A lot, really a lot. Next, this is our toilet. We don't take it out because we're not allowed to leave here.
So what do you think of this kind of care for soldiers? Another explosion in Russia. This time, during the night, UAVs launched a massive attack on the Lipetsk and Voronezh regions. In the Lipetsk region, a red alert was declared. According to local reports, there were at least 20 explosions. There, drones once again targeted the Energia plant. The strike on the plant was also commented on by Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council.
The Energia plant in the city of Yelets, Lipetsk region, was attacked. There, they manufacture batteries for guidance and correction units for the Iskander missile system, as well as for cruise missiles. Energia is one of the most critical targets for Russia.
This is already the second strike on Lipetsk Energia. On May 23, drones had already flown there and caused quite a stir.
Yeah, look. A drone just hit Energia.
In addition to the attacks on the Lipetsk and Voronezh regions, a facility exploded in Kotovsk-Tambov region. It is known that 4 people were killed. Another loss for the occupiers. In Crimea, it is believed that the commander of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, Ildar Akhmerov, was eliminated. Russian military bloggers report that Akhmerov was killed as a result of, I quote, a treacherous strike by the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. As usual, the Russians are threatening revenge.
This is war. In Crimea, as a result of a treacherous strike by the main intelligence directorate, Vice Admiral and Commander of the Black Sea Fleet Ildar Fernandovich Akhmetov was killed. Details will follow later. We are obliged to take revenge and are awaiting a response targeting decision-making centers.
However, in the report by the Russian war correspondent, Eldar Akhmerov is somehow referred to as Akhmetov. It is also likely that Akhmerov's position is listed incorrectly, as he was the Chief of Staff and First Deputy Commander of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Was. I hope he really was, and is not anymore. The GUR reported the elimination of Akhmerov, which for now has not been commented on by the Russians. So we are waiting for official confirmation from Ukrainian intelligence. In the meantime, we can celebrate another confirmed elimination of a Russian soldier. Yesterday, Russian public channels began reporting the death of Mikhail Gudkov, who was the commander of the 155th Marine Brigade and the deputy commander of the Russian Navy. Gudkov was found in Kursk region, and it seems he wasn't the only one.
After arriving in Korenevo, things are much worse. 4 strikes hit the forward command post of one of the brigade. More than 10 people were killed, many of them senior officers.
The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the death of the Major General and hero of Russia. But that's not all the good news. Online sources report that in occupied Luhansk, the former mayor and collaborator Manolis Pilavov was blown up. We are waiting for confirmation. There was also tension in Moscow. The day before, a car exploded right in the city center. Later, Russian social media channels, citing eyewitnesses, reported that there were several explosions and at least 2 cars burned. And again, according to confirmed information, the car that exploded contained an 80-year-old KGB veteran and his daughter, who also worked in the security services.
More and more. If only they had moved the car away.
Russian Telegram channels report that they managed to get out of the burning car and survived. There are currently no comments from either the Russian or Ukrainian side, nor are there any details. So we are waiting for official information. Ukraine has enough weapon stockpiles to last until the end of the summer. If supplies are not resumed, the country could face a critical gap. And, as journalists from Bild write, European countries are not yet ready to fill this gap on their own.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
There is particular concern about the halt in deliveries of the Patriot PAC-3. These are the very missiles capable of effectively shooting down ballistic missiles which the Russian army is using to attack Ukraine with increasing frequency. Without them, the Patriot air defense systems, including those provided by Germany, will lose their ability to protect Ukrainian skies.
There will also be a shortage of ammunition for the HIMARS systems. If this happens, the effectiveness of these multiple launch rocket systems will be significantly reduced. And the halt in the supply of AM-7 missiles for F-16 fighter jets will leave Ukraine without an important means of countering Russian Shaheds. In the worst-case scenario, if arms supplies are not resumed by the end of the summer, the situation will become more difficult not only at the front, but also in cities far from the front lines, because there may simply be nothing to protect the civilian population and critical infrastructure. But I would still like to focus in more detail on the consequences of the decision to halt weapons supplies to the front, In a word, it's lousy. But let's break it down. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, after analyzing the situation, have concluded that even a partial suspension of American military aid will significantly play into the Kremlin's hands and accelerate Russian victories on the battlefield. In its forecasts, the Institute relies on the consequences of the previous delay in deliveries in the fall of 2023 and in the winter-spring of 2024. The map of enemy advances and the pace of their offensive speak for themselves.
According to estimates by the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces advanced approximately 3 kilometers per day between the suspension of United States aid to Ukraine on the 6th of December 2023 and its resumption on the 24th of April 2024, with a significant portion of this activity occurring in the Donetsk region. In comparison, during the 6 months prior to the suspension of aid in December 2023, Russian forces were actually losing a total of about 203 square kilometers at a rate of 1 square kilometer per day, due to Ukraine's gains during the 2023 counteroffensive, which was made possible by increased military assistance to Ukraine from the United States and other allies.
At the same time, the current decision by the Trump administration will reinforce Putin's theory of victory that the Russian military can sustain gradual advances on the battlefield longer than Ukrainian forces can defend and longer than the West is willing to support Ukraine. And on top of all that, Putin will once again be convinced that time is on his side. The Wall Street Journal in turn confirms that the decision to hold supplies, even if only temporarily, looks like a signal to Putin to continue the war. The real reasons behind Trump's decision, even if temporary, remain unknown. However, as The Economist writes, citing anonymous sources, there are fears in Kyiv that this could be part of Trump's strategy to force Ukraine into political compromises.
The Pentagon presents its decision as limited and temporary. However, Ukrainian officials suspect that these efforts are being driven by the administration of US President Donald Trump. In this way, Washington may be trying to pressure Ukraine into making political concessions, as it did at the beginning of March.
But as bad as this may seem, the publication reminds us that a similar situation occurred in March. However, this time the decision caught even Donald Trump's allies off guard. Moreover, according to Politico, the decision disappointed both the president and his associates.
According to 6 sources familiar with the situation, the Pentagon's decision to halt the supply of certain types of weapons to Ukraine surprised even those who are usually well informed about such matters, including members of Congress, State Department officials, and key European allies. The unexpected move on Monday caused concern and disappointment, particularly among senior Republicans.
We hope that this decision is temporary and that supplies can be resumed as soon as possible. According to the Financial Times, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky will discuss this today in a phone conversation with Donald Trump. While the world is abuzz with the news of the US halting arms supplies to Ukraine, trouble is coming our way from an unexpected direction. As early as this fall, support for Ukraine from the Czech Republic may also come to an end. This refers to the Czech initiative under which Ukraine receives shells. So Czech President Petr Pavel stated in an interview with the BBC that he cannot guarantee the continuation of the initiative. The reason for this is the upcoming elections, which could bring politicians into parliament for whom helping Ukraine is not a priority. But the Czech Republic and Pavel, as one of Ukraine's most devoted friends, promised to do everything possible to maintain support at the same level.
Right now, all my efforts are focused on preserving a unified approach to security and defense issues, including our policy towards Ukraine. Because I believe that supporting Ukraine is an integral part of our own security. In an interview with the BBC, the President of the Czech Republic stated, "I am discussing these issues with all the leaders of the parliamentary parties that in one form or another will be part of the next government. I discussed with them the need to maintain the same principles in security and foreign policy even after the elections. However, of course, I cannot give any guarantees at this time. A lot will depend on the outcome of the elections."
And to understand the importance of the Czech initiative, thanks to it, in 2024, Ukraine received 1.5 million units of large-caliber ammunition, and this year the supply volume will be 1.8 million. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the Czech Republic once again. And once again, regarding the US decision to halt arms supplies to Ukraine, more precisely, about finding solutions to the problems that this decision has caused. Politico reports that Ukraine wants to obtain permission to purchase American weapons through Europe. The idea is for Europe to buy weapons from the US and then transfer them to Ukraine. And Europeans are already working on this.
As part of these new efforts, several European governments are considering plans to purchase American-made weapons from their defense budgets to transfer to Ukraine. These funds will be included in the new NATO defense spending metric. but there are still no clear commitments yet.
But even here, there's a catch. The main issue is the need for US approval to use American-made weapons.
During the Biden administration, British Storm Shadow missiles were not delivered to Kyiv because they contained American components. According to a Ukrainian official, part of the negotiations will concern these permissions.
What do you think will this idea work? Will Trump be convinced not to hold supplies so we can do without alternatives? Trump lifted sanctions on Russian companies, but for now, take a breath, there's no betrayal after all. Because the White House lifted sanctions against Syria, so by lifting sanctions against Syria, Trump also removed 2 Russian banks and several Russian citizens from under the restrictions.
On the 30th of June, Washington dissolved the Syria sanctions list to support the development of the new Syrian state. This list included dozens of Russian companies and citizens, which led many Ukrainian public pages to hastily announce their release from sanctions, including the Russian military manufacturer Rosoboronexport.
However, the US Treasury Department reported that the vast majority of those listed in the Syria sanctions list were either moved to the new sanctions list for supporting the Assad regime or remained on other sanctions lists. The nuance is that Russian companies were simultaneously pressured by 3 sanction regimes: Syrian, Iranian, and Russian. So for the banks and the state-owned Rosoboronexport, only the Syrian sanctions regime was lifted, meaning the other 2 still apply.
In the SDN list, specially designated nationals and blocked persons list and the SSI, sectoral sanctions identifications list, the Syria label was removed, but the Russia and Iran tags remain in place. So let Moscow rein in their expectations.
But still, there are a few banks from which American restrictions have been completely lifted.
President of Kalmykia Kirsan Ilyumzinov, Tem Bank and its chairman of the board Mikhail Gaglov, Russian Financial Alliance Bank, Alexei Makarov, vice president of the Russian Financial Corporation Bank.
That is, the sanctions have not been completely lifted. But it must be admitted that it has become a bit easier for these Russian companies to breathe. And to be honest with you, I don't really like this trend. The Ukrainian self-propelled artillery system Bohdana is making its debut. It seems that the flagship of Ukrainian artillery will also be produced abroad. An armored vehicle analyst suggests that the Bohdana is entering the international market. This is evidenced by the registration of an international patent for a modification of the self-propelled artillery system on a new chassis.
The patent was filed under the Patent Cooperation Treaty procedure, which allows the process of international legal protection of the self-propelled artillery system to be launched simultaneously in a number of countries that are potential partners and buyers. This was reported by the armored vehicle analyst BTVT. The patent documentation states that the Bohdana is registered both as a separate artillery module for installation on various types of chassis and as a fully fledged self-propelled system. Visually, it is presented on a new wheeled chassis in its final configuration.
Serial production of the Bohdana began in Ukraine in 2023. Since then, the domestic self-propelled artillery system has already been modified at least 5 times. The improved artillery system is performing very well on the battlefield, so we are not surprised that there is interest in producing it abroad as well. You've probably already heard more than once that the war in Ukraine is modern and technological. You also probably know that the Ukrainian armed forces and Ukraine's defense industry are setting trends in military affairs worldwide. Well, here's yet another confirmation of that, because it turns out that the front in Ukraine has become the most important license for drone manufacturers around the world.
If a drone manufacturing technology that is imported or tested by Western militaries is not tried out on the Ukrainian battlefield, then such UAVs may turn out to be outdated when faced with the challenges of modern warfare. This was confirmed in a comment to Business Insider by Justin Hedges, a former Marine and co-founder of the military intelligence company Prevail, which collaborates with the Ukrainian drone manufacturer Skyton.
This was also mentioned by Luke Pollard, the UK Minister for the Armed Forces. He said that if drone manufacturers do not test their products in Ukraine, they might as well abandon the idea altogether.
This aligns with the trend in Western countries to view the Ukrainian battlefield as a live laboratory. Initially out of necessity for the country's defense, but increasingly as an important way for small companies to develop systems and services with a technological edge.
Yet another reason to be proud of Ukraine. Of course, it would be better if war wasn't needed for this, but it is what it is. Like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you soon!